7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fresh presents Que Bola, where we talk to various movers and hustlers who are popping off and succeeding in the 305 and at the same time influencing the culture. I'm your boy D Fig. Holla at your boy when you see me in the street. Ew. Yo, what's up, man? I hope everybody doing good and chilling. It's your boy D. Holla at your boy when you see me in the street. We bringing another episode of the Que Bola podcast to you. Thank you so much to everybody who will be sharing and listening. In this episode, we sat down with Botanical Daydreamer, a self-described plant lady, also vintage hunter and civically minded individual from South Florida. She does pop-ups throughout South Florida, from Fort Lauderdale all the way down to West Kendall. We talked about all kinds of things such as plant inequality, climate change, pop-ups, and of course, corruption in the government here in South Florida. So this is a pretty interesting show. Without further ado, let's get into it, all right? Listo.
Wow, I believe history and facts. And if you're showing me a little timeline that shows like...
I believe history and facts. That's a tidbit right there amongst itself. I believe in history and facts.
And if history is showing us a cycle of plagues that are like 100 to 200 years in between...
But what are facts?
Wow, that's a good one.
What are facts? I'm dead ass serious. It's 2021. What are facts, bro? It's the truth. It's just, I don't even know what to tell you, bro. We're really in a... I'm very cynical. I'm extremely cynical, but I'm also optimistic because I know that humanity could come together and pull themselves together and do a lot of cool things when they put their minds together and they do all that shit.
I don't even know about that, okay? Because I look locally and I look at what I experienced working for the county.
Yeah.
And seeing just how the Board of County Commissioners was created to keep the office of the mayor in check and from abusing its power. But there's nothing to keep the Board of County Commissioners in check. So if you're an employee and they are fucking with you...
What do you mean? What? Hold up.
The Board of County Commissioners...
Yeah.
...was created to keep the mayor's office in check, to keep the mayor from abusing his power.
So the commissioners were created to check the mayor.
Correct.
City.
That's why...
And county.
County.
Oh, county, okay.
Let's look at the county.
All right.
Because each municipality is going to have to follow the county anyway.
Okay.
The way that it works is city follows county, county follows state, state follows federal.
Okay.
So as much as DeSantis would want to tell you in this state it's not going to happen, if it's a federal law, you kind of have to.
You have to.
Federal supersedes the state.
100%.
So...
Civics 101. Which a lot of people don't know.
No, they don't.
That doesn't make sense.
Most people don't even know how many districts are within Miami-Dade County.
How many districts are there? 13?
12.
I thought it was 13. You see, I was wrong.
So it's 12 or 13. But you have so many people that don't even know who their county commissioner is.
Yeah.
They don't even know where the office is. So...
Man, it's not even that they don't know. It's that they don't care to know. It's a difference between not knowing.
I don't even think it's that. Because when I worked as a commission aide, I met a lot of people out on the streets. And they were like, I had no idea that I could go to my county commissioner for stuff like this. That this is what my county commissioner is for. They're not aware. Because they don't want to add extra work to themselves. They're not going to market themselves as here for you.
Okay. Because what? That takes away resources and times from them.
Think about it. They're an elected official.
Yeah.
They have their own business aside from what they're doing for the
That's
county.
the craziest shit I've heard of in my life. They're elected officials, but then they have like a separate business. So like being an elected official is kind of like a part-time job, supposedly.
Yeah. And then when you factor in that, like, if you're...
corruption. When you factor in corruption, that basically lets you know
we'll
where
get to that in a minute. Okay, so you have the county commissioners, and every couple weeks when it's season, you're going to go into the county commission meeting. And that's where all local legislation is passed.
Okay.
They're voting on it. They're voting on whatever local legislation is happening. Most people don't even realize that, and that's all public record.
Okay. So, but that's why I mean that the public has to get engaged themselves. So that's what I mean by, like, they don't give a fuck either way. Honestly, people don't got time for that. They got to watch the Kardashians and shit, you know?
More like a lot of people, and I beg to differ, because before I went to work for the county, I worked for a national private security firm.
Okay.
Okay, nationwide. I was the regional HR rep.
Okay.
That meant my area was Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Miami-Dade County. Had about 1,500 employees just in my area. When you're working shift work like that, which a lot of people do, you just don't have time to be engaged because you're working a lot of hours. Most of the time, the person that might be covering your set, like you're working 7 to 3.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn, I got to go get my kid now from school. Guess what? If your coworker is late, you can't leave your post in security.
Yeah.
Because then we're in breach of contract. So you have to stay there till your person...
Next person,
And they may
relieves
not
you.
show up. If they don't relieve you, you're stuck until your manager figures out who's going to come in to relieve you or if you're going to stay to cover that shift. So at that point, how much time do you have to engage in your local community if you're just trying to get through a job that pays you barely minimum wage? And you are like living a life of like, I got my kids, I got this job, I'm trying to keep a roof over my head.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like a lot of people aren't. I mean, okay, maybe not because they have to watch Kim Kardashian, but they do have a lot of other shit in their life that's going on.
The way that life is set up in Miami and the way that things are costing, the cost of living versus like living wage, it's not there. So people are not motivated to give a fuck because they're too tired from working 1, 2, or 3 jobs.
Okay. So we in the mix. We in another episode of the Que Bola podcast with special guest, Miss Mireya Alfonso. Did I say that properly? Mireya Alfonso.
Yes.
Botanical Daydreamer on IG. And amongst other things, civically engaged and civically minded individual from South Florida who's really, you fucking around with the plants right now, right? You like the plant lady. You loving that shit. I see it.
Apparently, I have become the plant lady, which is something that we talked about a couple years ago when I said, I have a little dream of what I would like to see in the future for this. And it really went into full speed when I lost my job during the pandemic.
Okay.
So instead of waiting for like my retirement years, it just happened now.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's happened to a lot of people. A lot of people that I know have really like took that pandemic time and they took it to like reflect and be and understand what their life is like, their trajectory is like, and what they want to do, what they actually want to follow, and they saw that opportunity to like say, okay, let me go in another trajectory. Let me just go in another way because as of right now, I don't know what's gonna happen. A lot of people's jobs were going remote. A lot of people were like getting let go of. So that kind of like shifted a lot of things in terms of employment, right? A lot of people are now self-employed. They said, okay, I could actually handle this. It was kind of like a test period where they're like, can I actually be an entrepreneur and a business person and be like have it all on myself, like all the weight on my shoulders?
I think it was also like pushed upon a lot of us. You had the choice to spin your wheels applying for jobs and not get hired because numbers kept creeping up last summer.
Okay.
And they were steadily like in a place where a lot of employers didn't feel confident hiring new office staff. An office staff, right?
Understandably.
And then you had restaurants that shut down, so you have a big hit in that sector. Mm-hmm. So you had time to say, I'm either going to let the rejection, like not hearing back when you send your resume off and applying and not getting anything. You're going to either let something like that get to you, or you're going to do something with your time to kind of keep yourself going. I mean, that's what I did. After the first month where I was getting callbacks because I was qualified, but I kept hearing, with everything going on in the pandemic, we're going to hire a family friends.
Okay.
And I get that too, like...
What do you mean family friends?
Like, straight up, like, people that were, like, prospective employers or, like, we've decided to go with a family friend for the position.
You mean like cronyism and nepotism.
Yeah. And I get it. If you're a small business, you're looking out for your circle.
Yeah.
I'm not even bitter about that. I understand how that works in a town where it's who you know most of the time.
I'm bitter about that.
It is what it is. But
it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't, but in that kind of situation, when you feel like backed up into a corner, you can either let it get to you or you make something for yourself.
I mean, I don't let it get to me, but I still call it out for bullshit that what it is.
Absolutely.
Because in a town where, like in South Florida, right, it's all about who you know, who your friends are. If all your friends, and this is something this is particularly one problem. I have I have one company that I'm really like irate at, which is Telemundo. All right.
Okay.
So Telemundo, you go on their LinkedIn profile page and you see all the 2,200 plus employees that they have. You go through all their pages, right? And I would say like 92 to 95% of all the employees at Telemundo are either white or white passing Latinos, right? Mm-hmm. No Afro Latinos such as myself. So that means that the Afro Latino story is not being told in Telemundo in any way, shape, or form. There's no produce. There might be like 3 or 4 producers that are Afro descent, right?
Right.
So if it's all about nepotism and it's all about friends who you know, and it's been proven that about 75% of white people only know white people, that means that in a situation such as Telemundo's, a person such as myself doesn't have really any opportunity to get into the business or get into that company, right?
All right, I'll tell you my personal experience working for the county.
Okay.
So when I worked for the Board of County Commissioners,
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a county commissioner. I was the only Latina on staff.
Okay. Because they all knew each other, right? They were all friends, or they all knew each other from high school.
The entire staff was Haitian.
Okay. And they kept it amongst themselves.
So they hired me because they needed someone on staff to speak Spanish. Because without any Spanish speaker on staff, how are they going to meet the needs of the Spanish-speaking constituents in that district?
Well, it's the opposite for me. You know what I'm saying? It's like all of these people all went to Lourdes and St. Brendan's and whatever the fuck together.
So you see it on both sides. So I experienced that myself. And eventually I was let go because they hired a Haitian person to replace me.
You see how how do you tell me that that's not fucked up?
It is.
Okay.
It
all
is.
right.
And
okay.
it was super demoralizing for
All
me.
right.
And I was really depressed when I lost my job because
right.
it's the pandemic. I'm a single mom.
Yeah.
I was doing an excellent job. I was doing everything that was asked of me. And I'm talking about they really put me through like a toxic work environment during the pandemic.
They put you through a ringer.
As soon as schools shut down, they automatically put me on a forced leave.
Yeah.
Because the office hadn't shut down. But because my kids were on distance learning, I had to use leave time. Those 2 weeks that I was out of the office, nobody that spoke Spanish was getting assisted. And that was at the start of the pandemic. And the constituents in that particular district are elderly. Elderly constituents.
That need a lot of help.
That don't know what's going on. That are already on Medicaid, on Social Security, on food stamps. Their senior centers are now closed, so their only lifeline to any kind of social activity is shut off. And now these people have nobody in their commissioner's office that can communicate with them.
I mean, that's fucked up. That is the everyday of South Florida. It's all about who you know in any position. It's like I've seen it so many times that there'll be an open job position, right? Pero fulanito, who's this guy's cousin or this person's or mi tia or whatever the fuck, is the one who gets the job, to the point that I have a friend who works for the Miami airport, right? That works at the airport. At the airport, they have such a problem with this that they instituted a rule that fathers can't hire their kids anymore, because what they were actually doing were they were getting their kids to come into the jobs to fill in the positions, but now it's gotten to a point where the nepotism is so strong that the kids weren't even...
HR has probably had to step in and say, you're not allowed to work on the same shift as family members.
Exactly.
You're not allowed to manage or supervise family members, because that's something that I saw when I worked private sector.
Exactly.
So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. And I'm not agreeing with it on any side.
Yeah.
But it's all, I think we all have a moment where we've dealt with that professionally down here in Miami, where you're like, what the fuck?
I mean, that's all I've ever dealt with. Honestly, to be 100%, like, that's all I've ever dealt with.
Some people have dealt with it to an even more extreme degree than others.
Yeah.
That was my first time experiencing that. And, like, again, was it demoralizing for me? Yeah, because I loved my actual job and what I was doing for the community and everything that I got to do through the job. The people that I worked with were toxic as fuck. I saw a whole side that I was like, these are the people who are behind the legislation for our county and who represent us. Yeah. And wow, it's really like eye-opening.
You get to see like the sausage being made.
Yeah.
And it's a fucked up sausage.
Oh yeah, it really was, and I tend to be a very optimistic and hopeful person. So I went into the job super excited because I had been burnt out working in the private sector, working HR. My job in HR, I was investigating people. I was investigating people for sexual harassment, for wrongful termination. Let me tell you, when you have to investigate people to that degree all day, every day, you get burnt out.
No, 100%. That shit is like it could even cause PTSD.
So I was happy to like move into a position where I thought I'm going to be helping my community. And I loved the actual work I did, but just seeing how the office was managed, seeing how I was treated as a person, it was like, wow, I cannot believe this.
I feel like those communities, like especially within the Haitian community, right? They feel like we've garnered this little power structure for ourselves. So, and they're aware of like how the rest of the county works and how the rest of the city works primarily. So they're like, okay, we got this little power for ourselves. We're not gonna let anybody else outside of anybody who's in the Haitian community get this power, because it took us forever to get this power away from these white Cubans or these white Latinos, right?
Again, but you're speaking on the fact that they were disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And then you have to also deal with the local politics that go into that. You're talking about a group of immigrants that had wet foot, dry foot, and another group of immigrants that did not.
Exactly.
And they were both coming out of similar situations because the living conditions in both islands are abysmal.
I mean, yeah, 100%. I would say, without a doubt, I would probably say that Haiti is probably worse.
Because of the natural disasters. Because you have to add that on top of it. Cuba hasn't been rocked by earthquakes. It hasn't been rocked.
Massive hurricanes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you add that level of destruction to an already struggling community, you know, it's generational trauma too that they're carrying.
All of that I've dealt with, all of that you dealt with, but you dealt with it in the opposite situation where the Haitian community has garnered some kind of structure of some kind of power, and they don't want to let it go to anybody who's not Haitian, which I understand, you know?
And I get it. But at the same time, like, you also have to remember that this community that you're representing encompasses a lot of other people.
Which is what the other tends not to do.
Now, and in specifically this district, we're talking about an elderly Latino community, which is predominantly Puerto Rican, Central American in that particular neighborhood. A lot of them are living in trailer parks, which I know seems odd to hear in Miami. That still happens.
No, I know. There's a trailer park right down the street from here.
But it's all, yeah, exactly. So once you start going like a little bit north and west, you see them. Yeah. And I've had to visit constituents because you would get calls from constituents regarding there's a hole on the street or
raw
there's a flooding
sewage or something like that.
And we'd have to go out and talk to them. And I would see how some of these elderly people were living. And it really made me aware of how I would say that the biggest takeaway from that was like, yeah, there's cultural nepotism, and I took it in stride, and I see the big picture enough to understand where my role is in all of this, and that wasn't my fight. Yeah. Like, there's an overwhelming good that they're doing for the community, and for a community that has been largely ignored, because predominantly we are in a Cuban community here. Yeah. So I get all that. But I think the biggest takeaway from working for the county was how the cost of living here and living like where you can live affordably, they're not matching up.
I mean, that's never been South Florida.
And you don't feel it as much when you're young. So, you know, up until a certain age, you're not really feeling it because you're either living at home with your parents or you have a roommate or now you're married and you're sharing that expense. So it's not such a hard hit. But like nobody's really like examining how it affects people once they're elderly, once they're widowed, once they're totally living off of like Social Security.
Yeah, those people are the ones that are marginalized and oftentimes don't even get any type of resources, and they get caught up in that fight.
And those buildings, the county buildings are awful.
Yeah, but then the county,
they're awful,
is basically bending over for developers, right? Giving them all kinds of tax breaks.
I'm talking about these old buildings that are for people like that are on a fixed income. I'm not talking about new development. I'm talking about these old where you have to qualify to move in, and they are in abysmal shape. Yeah. They're awful. I mean, roaches all over the place.
Yeah.
That's not just
Commonplace.
because it's not because this person is not like they're not a
Clean.
clean person.
Yeah.
It's because this is infrastructure. You're not fumigating the building.
Yeah.
There's plumbing issues that are now attracting all kinds of
There's
vermin.
no maintenance, basically.
Right. And like this is what the elderly people are now like left with. So if you are an elderly person in Miami, like if you're a single person in Miami right now in your 40s
Yeah.
and you don't have kids, you don't really have a whole lot of family, you're fucked.
You're-
if you plan to retire here.
You're
Fucked.
If you're planning on
Hey,
planning to stay
adopt
here.
a kid.
Adopt
Find
a
yourself
kid.
a family member like aging that's gonna have your best interests in mind once you get to a certain age. Because if you don't, then who's gonna advocate for you?
I mean, I don't think anybody will advocate for you. I mean, oftentimes senior citizens and people in the third age, they don't really have people to advocate for them. They don't have like any kind of power at that point, right? Outside of the
No.
fact that they're the ones that vote. That's the only thing.
The people that are like lucky are the ones that have kids, the ones that have family, the ones that are like, you're not leaving your abuela all abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah. You have some kind of structure behind you that kind of helps you out.
You have a support system in place that's making sure that even if you are in an assisted living facility, they're not taking advantage of you because your family's there all the time and they know what's up.
So that experience left you disheartened, right?
Oh hell yeah! So I'm already making my plan to leave Miami, and
Damn.
especially for my parents.
Yeah.
Okay, because I at first my mom was like, "Oh my God, Mireya, here we go.
Yeah.
Dios santo, she's talking politics again." Like
Yeah.
that's the vibe that my family throws out because they're
Always.
all very conservative, very Republican. And they're like, ya llegó la hippie. Ay, ten cuidado. tú
Yeah.
sabes." That's
Why is it that like that's crazy as like yo, you know how many of my friends are in the same situation where they're like the black
sheep of the
sheep of
family.
the family because they're not super conservative or they don't share the same exact views, right, when it comes to like
But then like they just kind of make fun and they go, yeah, okay, hippie, settle down. Like
But it's the thing is that they don't see oftentimes they don't see the opposite side of actually see it with their own two eyes.
I think my parents finally started seeing it when I would talk about work and I would talk about these old people calling me.
Yeah.
And how like they had no PPE during the pandemic.
Yeah, like firsthand knowledge of like actual stories
Yeah.
that then affects them, that makes them say, "Fuck, that's
so
kind
then
of
I would
messed
be like,
up."
can you imagine retiring here like and not having anybody to look out after you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't honestly. Miami once again was ranked the other day as like the most unequal or the top 3 most unequal cities in the whole entire country. That's like everybody here knows that, right? You know that you're living here. It's income inequality 100%. No importa lo que pase, you know?
And I think at this point, if you're of a certain age, then you're living here on borrowed time. Because Miami's not going to be here forever.
Not only that, that takes us into the next step of like our discussion, which is like climate change, right? So climate change is not only affecting senior citizens, it's also going to affect people, primarily people in our age group, right?
Because we'll be elderly when the shit's hitting the fan.
When it's really bad.
Like, that little meme of the dog in a room on fire?
Yeah.
That's our retirement years.
100%.
That's
is
it.
us.
That's us.
So I
Just
was
add little canas to the dog.
Yeah.
That's us. That's what we have to look forward to.
That's crazy. When I talked to Mario Ariza about his Disposable City, his book, he made it very clear that like he doesn't know what our future's gonna be like, but he's very clear that the future's gonna be extremely disastrous, right? And it's like our generation isn't really talking about it. I'm talking about it as much as possible and not trying to annoy people, but I'm just trying to get people to realize like, yo, if you buy a house, right? You get a 30-year mortgage on it. By the time that you're ready to like retire and you're considering that house as your nest egg, it just might not be there. That nest egg might just disappear, right? Because property values could crater at any minute depending on like what neighborhood you're living in, right?
But let's just get a little bit like more like, and that's like on big picture level, right? That's on the bigger end of the scale there, right? But there are things that you could be doing now that can help out, and I think people just aren't interested in doing that. So when you look at the way people locally are landscaping their homes, when you tear out everything and put in concrete,
Yeah. That's like number one in Hialeah too. I see that all the time. Like people,
Westchester, it's just all
Yeah.
over the place.
Yeah.
You see people are like, I don't want to mow the lawn. It's too fucking hot. And they put all concrete. And now the big trend too is like those very like modern looking homes.
with the concrete blocks.
With a concrete like block driveway and like the pebbles and like one little palm in like the corner. I understand the aesthetic.
Yeah.
But you also have to like now start considering your landscape as part of your sustainability. And that's not just like having grass. Grass has a very shallow root system.
Yeah.
So if you only have sod, and worse, if you only have artificial turf, where's that water going to go?
It's not. It's just going to stay there. Estancado.
And then you're going to get mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Which then like now contribute to diseases.
Yeah.
So now let's focus on your neighbor who does have plants, right?
Yeah.
When you use your property wisely, and I'm talking about, I want you to think about like stories you heard about your family in the Caribbean or back, home. You're from Colombia, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at these older properties, they always have fruit trees. There's always palm trees. There are certain plants that are there for a reason, but people don't want to like listen to their elders anymore because we think we're better than them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you ain't shit. Eres un viejo. Like, el otro día se te olvidó dónde salir pa la panadería, and you're trying to tell me how to do shit.
Yeah.
And you get dismissive without realizing there's so much knowledge that is not being passed down.
Or it's trying to be passed down, right? Because they're trying to pass down that information, but the things that we're so technologically forward thinking that we don't think that any of that knowledge that they're passing down actually has any value.
Cool. So now when we get hit with water droughts and getting bottled water becomes really expensive in like the next 20, 30 years, people who are going to be totally living a great life are people that have a lot of coconut palms on their property.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of, because they irrigate, basically, they suck up all that water.
Well, no, you have coconuts who are now giving you coconut water. So you have a source of hydration.
All right. So when you went into the whole like green thumb thing and growing plants and selling them, you have an Etsy store.
I do.
You started your IG and it's grown tremendously, like by gangbusters, right?
Yeah, it's grown organically.
Yeah. I seen it like go from 0 to like where you're at, like almost 3,000 followers right now, right?
Yes.
And it keeps growing every day.
Yeah.
So did you initially think, all right, I'm gonna do this just because I have a green thumb and I love plants, or did you have that like ecological climate change thought in the back of your head where I could help people in South Florida learn how to grow a certain type of garden that could help them with root systems, things like that could help their property value and could help South Florida itself, right?
So I bought my house when I was 23.
Okay.
So
congratulations, by the way. That's a big up.
Yeah, and I bought it by myself, not with any man.
Oh, snap.
That's what's up.
2 snaps and around the world.
And that house is in my name and my name only.
Okay.
And I bought that house when I was 23. I'm 41 now.
Okay.
So I've been there for a minute.
All right.
And I
almost up on the mortgage though, right?
Oh God, I wish. I had to refinance.
Okay.
But yeah, so... But even then, like, my mortgage is nothing compared to rent.
Yeah, well, rents are going for right now, 100%.
So I feel very fortunate. I feel like I made a very wise decision at a very young age.
Okay.
Because a lot of 23-year-olds were not thinking in terms of, like, I got this extra flow, let me put it down on a house. A lot of 23-year-olds were like, let me travel.
Let me go to the club and buy some bottles.
Ibiza, here I come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, fuck, do I do like a backpacking like through Europe for the summer with this money? Or do I put down a house knowing that Miami is getting expensive every day?
Yeah.
And I might not be able to afford it in 5 years.
100%.
So that's what I went with.
Okay.
And the house I picked was a tiny house, but on a nice sized property. So I'm almost on a quarter of an acre in North Miami.
That's a big property.
And my front lawn is what most people would love to have as a backyard.
Okay.
I'm not on top of my neighbors, so that's really nice too. And my aunt, who is Mexican, is the one who taught me about like butterfly gardening and the concept of like growing like plants that are useful, like aloe, like fruits that you're actually gonna eat, And so I've been playing around in that garden for quite some time now.
All right.
And that's how I've learned everything I've learned about working with each season down here, what plants work, what plants will not work, what kind of care they're going to need. And then I want to say Irma came around and decimated my entire garden.
All right.
And I had to clear everything out. And it wasn't just that Irma decimated my garden. When FPL came in to clear out like an alleyway in between the houses, they dumped everything in my yard.
Okay.
So it was like double damage at that point. And I got really sad that all this hard work that I had put in for like over a decade was gone. So I took a break and I was like, fuck it. Whatever is going to come back in this garden is going to come back. And I'm going to have to give it a season or two to see what survived. After everything has been cleared out and there were some things that got left behind.
Okay.
And that was when I started working with houseplants.
All right.
And I just didn't want to bore people on my personal IG with plant content. So I created Botanical Daydreamer as a way to share information about houseplants, my garden, just information that maybe other gardeners or other plant people would want to see. That's how it started.
But how did you initially gain the skill set? Like, was when you purchased your crib and you were like planning
Trial
stuff?
and error.
So you didn't have a green thumb?
No, I didn't know anything at all. So, like, a lot of people who buy their house, they're like, oh, man, that plant's super cute. Let me put that there. And then it doesn't survive. And you're like, damn, what the fuck did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And you have to start, like, researching. And, okay, that's not going to work because that's an annual. So it only has a life cycle of 6 months. And what I need in South Florida is something that I can plant and not really pay attention to and will kind of take care of itself. Because we have humidity. We have heat. You need to be sun tolerant. There's so many requirements. And I just slowly started educating myself. So it's been a process for like 17 years.
I mean, bro, that's a big thing right now, especially in the pandemic. That became huge. Like the whole entire plant life and plant parents and all of that. I have friends who are like super into their plants, right?
And they haven't even probably thought about what's going to happen when they go on their first post-pandemic vacation.
Oh, no, believe me. The friends that I'm talking about, they think about all of that. They have, like, people who are like, oh, are you going to come over and water my plants and all this other shit? They ask me, hey, can you come over and water my plants? I'm like, yo, I might forget. And I don't want that responsibility. You know what I'm saying?
It's a lot, but at the same time, it's a hobby that brings a lot of, it's like a very soothing hobby.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if you are stuck at your desk all day now.
Yeah.
And it's a pandemic and you're not able to get out, there's something soothing about looking around and seeing that greenery.
I see what you're saying, 100%, yeah.
You know, there's something about it that kind of also anchors you because you have something that you now have to add to your daily schedule to like do and to take care of. So it gives you something kind of to look forward to as well.
So you think that the plant life could also contribute to like the wellness of your mental health?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're taking not just time to care for that plant, you're taking time to do something that brings you a sense of peace and joy, even if it's momentarily.
Okay.
You're not picking out a plant that's ugly. You know what I'm saying? You're not picking out a plant. Like, you picked that plant because it sparked something in you. You saw it and it resonated. And you're like, that would look really dope in my space. And now, like, you see it there every morning when you wake up or when you go into your home office. And it makes you feel good about that space. And in taking care of it and in seeing it grow, like, that does something for you, you know, on a personal level.
I definitely have to say that you're right on that because I have a mango tree outside. And I see the mangoes sprout their little baby mangoes, right? And that makes me feel happy for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't even know why. Like,
because you're seeing a life cycle happen right in front of your eyes that you're able to see from beginning to end and that you get to enjoy.
True.
You get to enjoy it from the moment where it's just like a transient moment outside where you're enjoying that moment and you get to see nature.
Yeah.
But then you're also enjoying the fruit of your harvest when you get to eat those mangoes and share them with friends.
Yeah.
And there's something nice about that because that is like a bonding moment when you're eating with people. So now you add to it that you grew it.
Yeah, and it's an additional like happiness, joy that it brings to me. It's crazy. I never consider myself like a tree or a green person, right? Like a green thumb person, but going through like the experiences that you mentioned with the mango, and I also have an avocado tree, like it makes me, I don't know, it just makes me think about something outside of myself. Like I gotta give this plant nutrients. I gotta make sure that it's right, and I have to like
hit it with a fertilizer or something, you know, or like I have like a what are those little white gnat problems?
Yeah.
So they get on the tree and then they eat the original seedlings. So I have to like be on top of that, right? And I have to be like echando veneno on the floor so it doesn't fly up to the things and whatnot. Da, 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 da. And that whole experience makes me feel like I'm caring for someone else, but it's a plant at the end of the day.
But it's
You
something
know?
that typically, like, and I think that you see this more with like indigenous people, is like a stewardship towards the land.
Yeah, that's what it's at.
Okay, my family, like, I'm Cuban Mexican.
Okay.
I learned everything about gardening and farming from my Mexican family
Yeah.
because they have farmland over there. So that's something that's been a big part of their life. And working your land is a big part of that culture. So when you have that sense of like kinship with your, even if it's your little tiny yard, everything that you're doing in there is going to come back at you, okay? Because it's not just that it's a tree that's giving you fruit, it's also providing shade for your house, which lowers your electricity bill.
Also, I love sitting under the tree and just looking up at it. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like I used to have ¿cómo se llama? A hammock, and I would just sit on the hammock and I just sit there and like chill, and I'd look up, and that would bring me so much peace, right? Until my hammock broke, I have to put it back up. But that was something that I would love to do. I would just love to go and hang outside underneath the mango tree.
Yeah.
And I never really understood why, I just knew that it would bring peace and serenity to me when I would do it. So it was like another added feature of like, bro, I love this tree. And like now I talk to a point where I sing to the tree, like I feel like I'm giving positive vibes to the tree, and the tree gives me positive vibes back. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and that's not something that we are taught to value here in this country. That's not a very American thing. That's something that you see in other countries.
Yeah, it's like more harmonious with
You
nature
go
thing.
to any Caribbean country, you're going to get that vibe.
Yeah.
You go down, like, again, it's a cultural thing to have that sense of respect for the lands, because it's acknowledging that this is what shelters us and this is what's given us our subsistence and where we make our homes.
Yeah.
So you have to strike a balance with that. You just can't take and take and take and not give back.
100%. 100% with that. I also feel like my diving background brings a lot of that too, because like when I dive, I'm very, very connected to the coral, right? Like I kind of feel like coral. I mean, I'm a huge diver, and when I'm there, I just feel like the coral is like my house kind of thing.
It's a living, breathing thing.
But it's in the middle of the fucking ocean, por allá, retirado, like far as fuck. It'll take us 45 minutes to get to the coral or to whatever reef. But then when you jump there, you're just like, man, this is actually like, there's so much like life.
It's a life.
So much life is here.
Yeah, it's a fully alive entity, all on its own, that has its own little biosystem within it. And so that's something that happens when you have a very lush garden. I now have snakes in my
That's
garden.
crazy.
Yeah, I have a raccoon apparently that lives in my garden.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but
Yeah.
he lives there. That's what's up. I have cardinals. I have blue jays. So there's a lot that comes along with it. I mean, I have a lot of different butterflies too, based on the different plants that I have. So you start creating your own little like biosphere.
But you intended to do that with the butterfly stuff, or was that just a byproduct?
No,
Okay.
I intentionally. So before Hurricane Irma, I had intentionally planted a Florida native butterfly garden.
Oh, okay.
So all the plants were like Florida natives and specifically meant to attract butterflies.
Damn, that's dope, dude. That's fucking dope. That's like...
So that was a garden that we put together for my daughter's first birthday. And for her first birthday, everybody was asked to bring her a book or a plant for the garden. And when my kids were babies, like that, we spent all our time out there, like just gardening and putting plants in. I had a mulberry tree in that garden. I had a papaya tree. I mean, as far as like fruit trees in my yard, I have mango, avocado, I have lemon, I have naranja agria.
Nice.
I have carambola, I have
What's
mulberry.
carambola?
Starfruit.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Damn, that's dope.
I have moringa. And and I have some plantain trees, like actual like plátanos.
All right. And do you sell any of those sprouts?
I don't sell any of the sprouts. I usually share my crop with like family. Like,
Okay.
what I get as far as like what I get from my fruit trees is enough to share like with family and friends.
Yeah.
So it's not really like, and for myself obviously. So like the naranja agria tree usually is ready around December, which is great because that's when I make mojo.
Yeah.
So I usually make a big batch of that and then I'll distribute that. So it's about, for me, having like basic things that we use often because the price of food is going up too.
Yeah.
So if you look at the price of bell peppers and lemons, you've seen an increase, and that's a staple that you cook with pretty regularly.
Yeah. 100%.
So if you can grow your own lemons, which tastes way better than
Yeah.
anything store-bought, and then why not, you know?
And okay, so then when you initially started with the Botanical Daydreamer, did you consider like what was your like approach to it? Because selling plants online isn't like too easy. You know, it's not an easy task to like pack up each one of these little things and send them across the country and shit like
Yeah,
that.
and my plants have gone as far as North Dakota,
That's crazy.
Hawaii.
You
Puerto
sent a plant
Rico.
to Hawaii?
I have a lot of customers in Hawaii. I have some, like, I would say at this point, a solid, like, base of, like, 5 loyal customers in San Juan.
In San Juan, where in Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Damn, that's fresh. So like, yeah. So then, what's that like? What was that process? First of all, like, how did you initially start it?
Okay, so it started with, again, I had lost my job and I was feeling super depressed and I was like, damn, no one's hiring and COVID numbers keep creeping up and for sure I'm going to have a hard time finding an office job. One of my friends came over and she was like, you know, you're so good with vintage and with plants.
Okay.
Like, why not do something with that? At least to keep yourself busy until you find something. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. It's a good way to, like, just focus positively and, like, keep my work skills alive in some fashion.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who runs, like, a little food truck business.
Yeah.
He needed help for a couple of days. And the money that I made from that is what I ended up using to buy my first plant stock.
All right. So yeah. So then you bought plant stock. What do you mean by that? Like you bought like little sprouts or something, or like?
No, I went to a wholesaler.
All right.
And I was able to meet the minimum for buying from the wholesaler. And they obviously let me. I purchased a bunch of plants, which now when I look back at that picture, I'm like, that's all I got. Like,
Yeah.
compared to like what I pick up now, you know. But it started with a small IG story sale.
So, but it got the ball rolling.
Pretty much. So it started with a small IG story sale. I only had at that point less than 500 people on the Botanical Daydreamer account.
Okay.
And I remember thinking for like the first 2 hours, like, coño, no, I guess no one's gonna buy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Without realizing, like there was this whole other inbox called Other, where people who didn't know me, like they had never emailed me before. That's where it was going to first.
Yeah.
So when I checked, and I was like, oh wait a second, and I checked, I had like sold out of all the plants. Like,
Damn.
Like people responded, people shared the story, and I was able to sell the plants. And then I did another story sale, and it kind of grew from that. And I was able to, I want to say, in October, I decided I'm gonna do a pop up.
All right.
I'm gonna do my first pop up.
October last year.
Yes.
All right.
So I said.
So it hasn't even been a year.
No. The business itself, like my first plant sale was in July. So it's been a year since I started as a business.
Okay.
Doing pop-ups, I've only been doing pop-ups, I want to say like 8-9 months.
All right.
But I mean, if you look at my account, you're like, this bitch is everywhere.
Yeah.
She's
I
like,
see you go to like every pop up.
everywhere in Miami.
Yeah.
Like,
Not even in Miami. Go all the way to like Fort Lauderdale and they go far, dude.
Like, I'll pop up in your backyard. Dame la dirección.
A pop up in your backyard.
Let's go. Invite la familia. I got matas. So it started with the Center for Subtropical Affairs.
Yeah, I know.
They were looking for vendors, and that was close to my house, and I thought that would be a great fit.
Yeah.
Where I can kind of pop up, and they already have foot traffic, and people are going there for plants anyway. And they allowed me to. It was really great because I wasn't carrying the plants that they had in their nursery.
Yeah.
So there was no overlap or competition.
Okay.
It just provided more variety for the people coming in. And that's when I started bringing out all the vintage stuff to the sales too.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Like,
Oh
so
my God, I've always been obsessed with vintage. I love vintage everything. I have really impeccable taste in vintage too.
What do you mean?
Like, I have a really good eye for vintage. I grew up with people who collected antiques.
All right.
One of my closest friends used to run an antique shop. So he taught me a lot about estate sales and garage selling and like looking like for marked pieces and just my obsession with like mid-century design too. That's another big thing for me. So I've always had really good luck when I go out looking for stuff and I find really amazing pieces.
So during the week, you go out looking for the vintage pieces?
Sometimes, but not, I don't really do that so much locally anymore. I usually go vintage sourcing up in Central Florida now.
Damn. So you drive to Central Florida to source all the pieces that you want to do for your pop-up.
Right. So my best friend lives up there and I'll take advantage
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll go visit her and then I will spend like 2 intense days. And when I tell you intense, I'm like done by the end of the day, like, because it's an overload of stuff that you're seeing. And I'm also hitting up estate sales. So you're going to like different houses and it's a lot, you know.
And you got to know how to get the right pieces, right? Like,
you got to know what you're looking for. This isn't like, there are some people that are like, I sell vintage. I went to Goodwill today. And
Yeah.
it's like,
it's not really vintage.
a lot of people are promoting themselves as like vintage vendors without even understanding like the difference between what makes something vintage,
Yeah.
what makes something secondhand, what makes something antique. I would honestly say, yeah, I label myself vintage, but most of my pieces are antique.
Okay.
Vintage is 20 years, 20 to 30 years out.
All right.
So you're looking at 80s to like 2000.
80s is vintage?
It's vintage, yeah. It's
Damn.
40 years old. Think about it.
Okay. Yeah,
1980.
that's true. So, and then what would be considered antique? Anything beyond?
Like, I would say anything from like 1970 and earlier.
So 1970 70 and below, and then 70 to 80 is like that gray space.
Yeah.
And
It's like that little like zennial.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
yeah.
where they go, I don't know what I am.
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes to a vintage, and then what? Secondhand or something?
Yeah.
And then what's before secondhand?
No, like secondhand, like,
That's it.
yeah. That means that like that's something that maybe you bought 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it ended up at Goodwill and it's cute. It's
Yeah.
a really nice little piece, but it's not vintage yet,
Yeah, okay.
but it's secondhand.
All right. I mean, the 90s is making a comeback right now when it comes
That's
to like
vintage.
clothing. That's vintage?
80s to like I would say 2000 is
Dang,
19
2000?
yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
in 2021.
Yeah, man, I keep forgetting it's 2021. It's always like, damn,
I
2000?
don't. I turned 40 last year and I was like, there's a fucking plague and it's my midlife crisis.
That's what's up, G. That's the way to celebrate it, right?
I was like, I'm gonna start a business. I'm gonna tattoo my whole arm up. Like, the last time I went to my tattoo artist, I was like, I'm not going back to corporate America. Just take over.
Give me a whole
Just
entire sleeve.
Give me a reason not to go back to, like, drug testing people and investigating them.
Damn, bro. That's crazy. So, okay, so then I see that you have, like, you specialize in certain types of vintage, right? You have, like, it's called milk glass?
Milk glass, yeah.
All right, so what exactly is milk glass? I see your pictures, but I don't know, like, what's the difference between just a white vase and, like, milk glass? What's that?
Because your white vase is probably ceramic.
Okay, all right, so you see now, all right, so let's get into the technical. So a ceramic is not milk glass.
No. Milk glass is glass that is white.
Oh, okay.
So in the glass making process, they add the white to it. In some cases, it's really, really dense. And in other cases, it's opaque. So you can kind of see
through it.
a little bit, yeah.
And
it just depends on the glass maker. There was like 3 or 4 different like large glass makers of that time.
Bro, I did not know that. I thought that like I didn't understand what milk glass was.
So
honestly.
here's the other thing too. Like I actually have a book
Yeah.
that values all of these pieces from the different manufacturers.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's like a handbook. It's like a guidebook. So you know how you have like books for like BMWs or
Yeah.
like classic cars? So there's a book for that.
For milk glass. Mm-hmm. Snap, bro.
Because it started out like there are some pieces that go all the way back to like the late 1800s.
Shit.
Primarily, my pieces are from like the 40s to the early 60s.
Okay. And are those highly sought after, like within the vintage?
People are obsessed with that.
Yeah.
It's like people who collect Funko Pops.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a niche for that.
Okay. So you're traversing in that niche, the milk glass niche.
Not even traversing. I just always have insanely good luck finding like milk glass wherever I go.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like going after that,
like I collect pink milk glass, which is even harder to find.
Pink milk glass.
Yeah. So I only have 3 pieces in my collection that I've found out like
while doing your stuff.
Yeah.
That's funny, dude. So then outside of the milk glass, what other like vintage pieces do you really specifically try to hone in on?
I try to just really go for anything that's functional. If like you've come to any of my pop-ups, that's one thing that you're going to hear, functional pieces. So I carry a lot of vintage Pyrex, which is highly collectible. So the vintage Pyrex is like mixing bowls that have patterns on them, and they were really popular from like the 40s. Like Pyrex made these printed patterns from like the 40s to the mid 80s.
Okay.
And depending on the pattern is how highly collectible it is.
What do you mean? The intricacy of the pattern makes it more expensive?
No, not the intricacy, just like what the pattern is. Like the ones that I personally collect are called like the butter print pattern.
Okay.
And I have them in the aqua color, which is like the 1950s, like vintage.
Pristine.
Yes, and those are really expensive. So a set of 4 mixing bowls in that Pyrex butter print can go for anywhere between $250 to $350.
Dang, Daniel. This is crazy. Mm-hmm. But I see you also carry like chairs and shit and all that other stuff. Yeah, like furniture.
Yeah. I love mid-century furniture. So if I find good, solid pieces, I'm going to snatch that shit up. I don't give a fuck. Let's go.
So do you have a truck? Because
no, I have an Altima.
So how are you doing all these pop-ups with furniture and glass?
Sometimes like, I'll borrow my dad's, he has an SUV.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll borrow my ex-husband's pickup truck.
Okay.
I'm like, yo, you and the kids will fit in the Altima just fine this weekend.
Yeah.
And we'll trade off and it's fine. I mostly tend to stick to myself. I'm very like self-reliant.
Uh-huh.
So I'm only borrowing those cars if it's like a really big event where I'm carrying a lot of stuff. Most of the time, it's just me by myself popping up, setting up. And when I mean like I load up the car, I unload, I set up the tent, I set up everything that you see in there. I'm also breaking down like it's all a lot of work.
Yeah, you do the sales, the merchandising, and the fulfillment basically.
Yeah, and the setup for the event.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm proud of myself at this point because I can open up and set up a 10 by 10 tent by myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got it down to a T. I don't need other people to help me at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I got it. But it is a lot of hard work. And yeah, I am a one-woman show.
Yeah.
And I pick up pieces that can fit in the backseat of your car. Like, if I show up with a chair or a table, that shit will fit in the backseat of your car because it fit in the backseat of my Altima. Okay? It came all the way down from Central Florida.
Yeah.
Super chill.
Yeah. So you could take it in your car.
You could take it in your car. I don't need to deliver. Like, you're fine.
Do you get asked that a lot though? Do you deliver?
I'm delivering a chair this week, actually.
Okay.
I am. That's the only delivery that I've done with furniture, and that's because I want to make sure that it arrives.
Nice.
Yes, it's a nice like recliner, a mid-century recliner. So.
Damn. All right. So then, when you do the pop-ups, right? Do you decide, okay, this time I'm gonna not take furniture, I'm only do plants, or do you like always mix them all together? What's your like?
Lately, I've been kind of separating. So carrying the vintage pieces is a lot of hard work. I'm carrying a lot of glass, carrying sometimes like antique radios, lamps, tables.
So you do
chairs.
all kinds of antiques. It doesn't matter like.
If it's in solid condition and it's like a solid like piece, then yes, I'm gonna grab it. I just sold a 1965 Sony AM/FM radio that was in mint condition, like beautiful wood grain box. Like this was like beautiful. Mm-hmm. But when I found it, I knew that it was a solid piece that somebody would really like. Mm. So I guess basically, if I would have to describe like the shop aesthetic, it's like Mad Men meets your favorite plant shop.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was going to, because now you have that like vintage and plant life at the same time. And I know that you're heading into creating a venture to do a pop-up for vintage.
Yes. So out of this whole thing, like, it wasn't enough to start a small business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then I was like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
These markets are cool, but it's all the same vendors every week. And the only place that you can go to legitimately buy antique is at the Lincoln Road Antique Market, which is great. And I'm super grateful that I've been asked to be a vendor at that event. But not everybody wants to wake up, like, really early on a Sunday.
Is that every Sunday or once?
Every other Sunday from October to May.
That's the Lincoln Road one.
Yes.
I always try to go, but I don't know the times. I just happen to like fall there when it's there.
Like, and look, and it's a great place because there's so much foot traffic.
Yeah.
And then the people there are a lot of designers and interior decorators that go there because they know that's where you can find some solid pieces.
Yeah.
Antique and vintage. But I know a lot of people, like, if you're in Kendall, you don't want to wake up on a Sunday at 7 a.m. to make it out to Lincoln Road by 8:30 so you can get some good vintage pieces. Like, you're probably still recuperating from last night.
Yeah.
And you would like to wake up a little bit later.
Yeah.
So the concept came to me of, like, mainland Miami should have its own equivalent of an antique and collectible market.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that.
All right. That's what's up. When is that? When is that like... When are we going to be privy to that? When is that?
The first one happened already a couple weeks ago. We
Okay.
did kind of like a test run with just the 3 vendors. Like, myself and my partner, because my partner in this venture, she sells clothes.
Okay.
I do the home goods, the furniture, and the plants.
So it was like a little beta test.
And then we invited a 3rd vendor in. And he sells, like, vintage caps and, like, jerseys and T-shirts.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah. Because it's important to me that this vintage market kind of represent the entire spectrum of vintage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we had him come in and it was a test run for us because you want to start off small to get the pieces going. Like, everything that you would need as far as, like, organizing. It's good, I thought, to do on a small scale first.
Okay.
So we now have a market coming up this Saturday.
All right.
At Gramps.
So, okay.
So this Saturday from 2 to 6, we'll be popping up at Gramps and we're going to have 6 vintage vendors.
All right.
There's going to be vintage clothing. There's going to be vinyl. There's going to be all kinds of, like, home decor and collectible. So we're hoping that, you know, it's a test run again. Like, we're branching out a little bit more and including a few more vendors. When I'm done with today's podcast recording, I actually have a meeting at a local brewery more towards, like, Westchester so that we can cater to the Westchester, Gables, Kendall crowd.
Okay.
And they're really into the idea. Today's walkthrough is to see how many vintage vendors I can fit in that spot because that's going to be the one that's going to have a lot of vendors. And I'm really excited about that one. And that one will be in September and that will be a night market. So you can go grab beers, hang out with your friends, shop for the best in, like, vintage. And it's going to be comic books, collectibles, antiques, furniture, clothes, anything vintage, it will be there.
So, and what's the name of the market?
Miami Vintage Market.
So it's Miami Vintage Market. Does it have its own IG page or?
Yeah, it has its
All
own
right.
IG page.
That's what's up.
I bought the domain already.
Hey, so Miami Vintage Market. Just in case you don't catch this, by the time you hear this, it might already pass. But it's gonna be up and coming. Different ones. Is it gonna be like once a month?
The goal is to have once a month on the east side of town.
Okay.
Once a month on the west side of town.
All right.
That way we're catering to both sides.
Uh-huh.
And we definitely will be having every other month a pop-up in Broward.
All right.
So we're working already on that one. We did one in July, so we're already meeting with those people to do the one in September.
And you're gonna still continuously do the green pop-up, right? The
Botanical Daydreamer, yes. So when my schedule permits, honestly, like, going into the season, market season really kicks off. I'm gonna be at Lincoln Road every Lincoln Road event this coming season from October to May.
All right.
Our Miami Vintage Market pop-ups will kind of happen in between those days.
Yeah.
That's why we're keeping those events to Saturday nights.
Okay.
Because Lincoln Road is Sunday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll squeeze in pop-ups probably realistically on the weekends that I don't have kids.
And you also have the Etsy store.
Yeah.
So the Etsy store ships nationwide.
Yeah. So this morning, 10 orders went out.
How do you ship it?
In a box, bro.
You just put it in a box and send it off?
It's not like that. You don't just throw it in there.
Yeah.
But like the plant will get wrapped. So the base of the plant, you know, like if they order this, which these.
Thank you, by the way. That's awesome.
You're welcome. So these will be available in the shop within the next month.
Okay.
This size, and you're gonna kind of wrap up the base. And I usually do it with some kind of like plastic bag. And then I'll put some kind of like paper to kind of keep it nice and tight so that the soil doesn't like fall out all over the place.
Okay.
You don't want it falling out of the pot and then it getting damaged.
Do you put it like this way up on the box or something?
So now you have this base covered. Then I add like a little cone, like a little paper cone. And then that cone gets stuffed with polyfill, which is basically like cotton ball material.
Yeah.
And it kind of keeps it nice and tight. The leaves are going to be protected by all that polyfill.
Yeah.
And then it gets slipped into a shoebox size box.
Bro, that's dope, man.
So when you get the box,
yeah,
it does say this way up.
Yeah.
Because I will put that. They know where to cut it. They just pull out the sleeve. They unwrap it. I have a video that I'll send to you later.
Yeah.
It was a client from Puerto Rico that did an actual video unboxing of one of my plants and recorded it.
Nice.
And I was nervous at first because you're like, yo, what if this is a plant that got lost for 3 weeks in the mail and it shows up looking like Charlie Brown Christmas tree?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Luckily, that's not what happened.
That's what's up.
And it was a great experience, but it was like, damn, okay, so this plant survived a 2-week, travel to Puerto Rico during holiday season when there was a lot of delays. And it was nice to see that it showed up intact. He was really happy with it.
Yeah.
And it at least made me feel good that my packing skills were good.
On point.
Yeah.
And do you show like DIY how to like re-plat it re-put it into another pot, or you just like send people YouTube videos or let them figure that out by themselves?
No, because I'm pretty accessible on my Instagram. So a lot of people actually reach out to me via DM.
Okay.
Even customers that I meet at pop-ups, I'm like, if you have any questions about plants, just go ahead and DM me. That way I can help you out if there's something wrong with the plant that you bought. Sometimes, most of the time though, I just get all kinds of like crazy plant questions. Like, it's not exclusive to the plants that they bought from me. They just have plant questions in general. So yeah, that's the easiest way to get to me.
All right. And with the plants, so you have the Botanical Daydreamer is the IG for the plant. The Miami Vintage Market is the IG for the pop-ups for your IG. And on there, you also have your milk glass stuff and all of that, or do you keep how do you keep them separate?
Botanical Daydreamer is the account where you're gonna find all of my plants and vintage finds.
Okay.
So I would say that that's really like, and I don't even have time to keep up with my personal IG anymore.
Yeah.
So that's really where you're gonna find me these days on Botanical Daydreamer. I post up all kinds of content in my stories, not just like plants or vintage stuff.
Yeah.
That's where you really get to know me a little bit better on a more personal side.
Okay.
Miami Vintage Market is just to promote the Miami Vintage Market pop-ups and any vendors that we're spotlighting. So today I featured on our IG account for Miami Vintage Market, Fort Lauderdale Vintage, and they sell vintage vinyl, and they'll be one of the vendors at this Saturday's event. So part of what we want to do is promote these vintage vendors. August is a tough month for any vendor if you're doing an outside market. The weather is horrible. Aside from it being hot, it's rainy season, so you're not guaranteed an outdoor event that could go off, well.
Yeah.
So it's the toughest season to be a vendor. So it was really important to us that we were able to provide an outlet for people to at least promote their business and have an ability to make money in a month where they don't usually have pop-ups.
All right. And you're taking like newcomers on who want to like do vintage pop-ups with you?
We are invitation only.
Okay. So you have to like send invitation only. So no submissions, none of that.
No.
You gotta approve them.
Yeah.
There you go, back into the nepotism.
That's right. Invitation only. I want to make sure that we are featuring the best vintage vendors.
I feel you.
So it's quality over quantity. It's not necessarily about nepotism because I just got into this.
I'm just fucking with you.
No, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't really have that kind of like connection with vintage vendors where it's like a buddy system.
Yeah.
I'm pretty friendly with everybody. I'm super approachable when you meet me at an event. But yes, we want to make sure that, one, we're not going to book 5 clothing vendors.
Yeah.
Then I'm putting my vendors at risk of not making money.
Yeah, I feel you.
So I want to make sure that it's limited to 1 to 2 vendors of each type of thing.
Okay.
So that there is representation, but there's not like only one thing being represented
Yeah, the
at the
whole
market.
entire market.
Right. So definitely in starting small, we've just been inviting vendors that we know have like solid stock.
Okay.
So at the first event, we featured Thriftways, and Brian is awesome. He has a really solid selection of like vintage concert t-shirts and sports t-shirts and caps. It was important to me that there be male representation at the vintage market.
Okay.
A lot of times I think the connotation is that it's for girls, for ladies.
I mean, normally a lot of the pop-ups are like females are the ones who are running them.
So it's important.
Vintage.
Right. But, there's a lot of vintage vendors that cater to a male crowd.
Yeah.
So we're going to have this one business that sells vintage comics.
Okay.
We have this other person coming in that sells like vintage video game consoles and games.
Damn, that's fresh.
Right. So when I talk about like representing vintage, it's across the spectrum. It's not just stuff that I want to collect or stuff that is related to Botanical Daydreamers content. It really is about opening up an avenue to let people know that like you can incorporate this as part of sustainability, your sustainability practice. Because by buying vintage clothing, you're not giving into fast fashion.
Yeah, that's another thing that like I love about the vintage life is that like it's kind of battling against climate change and global warming because you're not like purchasing something that was brand new made, something that's already been in the and that might end up in a landfill,
We're not contributing to shitty employment practices at a factory. We're not contributing to what those factories do to like local environment.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not contributing to fast fashion and trends. We're trying to like bring to everybody classic, timeless pieces, but also like to make people feel comfortable about their personal style. Not everybody's personal style is gonna follow whatever your latest IG influencer is telling you is the fashion.
100%.
Like you may find that your style resonates more with something from the 90s.
Yeah.
Or from the 50s or the 60s or whatever it may be. Like you should have the opportunity to do that for yourself.
Yeah,
that
to
is
show
part
off
of,
how you feel.
Like that's your style. That's who you are. And I think that's kind of what we help promote as well, because it's not just about the sustainability. It's about being comfortable with who you are and your fashion sense and your style sense, what your aesthetic is, and knowing that there is a like-minded community that is going to give you the opportunity to fulfill that.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. Like, this is something that I've been having in the back of my mind, knowing that, like, the plant life community is huge, right? But there's nobody that, like, represents it. There hasn't been, like, a big shift. You know how there's, like, a shift on everything technology-wise? I'm always expecting, like, the next Uber of plant life to come out, but nobody's stepped into that space, and I feel like you're going into that space and, like, creating that right now.
I definitely want the goal to be that if you're in Miami and you're thinking about buying plants, you're thinking about adding plants to your home, or you're thinking about buying vintage, like you think of me. You think of Botanical Daydreamer. Like I'm your go-to. Because it's not about trends. Like there's so many plant people that have popped up as businesses and really cater to like plant trends. And there are plant trends.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Plant trends?
Yeah.
Only plant trend I know is weed.
That's like forever trend.
That's the next trend.
That's a forever trend.
That's a trend for Cure Leaf. Shout out Cure Leaf, my dog.
No, like this year I would say the big plant trend is Hoyas.
Okay, I don't even know what a Hoya is.
It's a wax plant.
Right.
There's like so many different varieties.
Yeah.
They're super easy to care for down in this weather in Miami.
Okay.
But whereas you could buy one for like $15 maybe a year or two ago, now it's like $40 and up.
What?
Depending on the type.
Dang.
Yeah, I have one in my collection that if I sold just like a baby, I could sell it for $100.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so that's the trend. I would say that last year, the big trend was like And it still is, like, if you're a plant collector, everybody wants that variegated monstera, that tight constellation monstera.
I don't even know what that is. You talking mad Chinese to me right now.
Right, but your people who collect plants are going to be like, yeah, that bitch knows what she's talking about, bro. I want a variegated monstera, but that shit's like $500.
What?
Yeah.
$500 for a plant?
Yeah.
No.
There's one plant
and
that
it doesn't get you high?
No. Well, I mean, maybe, because you're like, I must have been high when I bought this shit.
For sure, dude.
Like-
$500. Dude, I love plants, but $500 for a plant?
I mean, I think the most expensive plant I've sold through the Etsy shop was like a $200 plant. Wow. Yeah. So.
Yeah, hats off to you, bro. Shit.
But,
that shit don't get you high in nothing.
But I try to like navigate away from the plant trends.
Okay.
I want it to be a more, like, I had an old friend who described it well when he said that, like, plant collecting had become like Pokemon collecting.
Whoa. Wow, I never even considered that it could
That
go
was
into
such
that
a great
realm.
analogy that he gave me too, but it is. So it's always like, what's the next big rare plant that I'm going to collect to add to? Because you have those kind of people when they go collecting.
Yeah.
Then you have collectors that are like, I really love roses. And that's
Yeah.
like their obsession. You know, you have other people that are like, I'm just into cactus. And because they're easy to maintain and I love the look. And so,
Succulents.
right. So you have your people that are into their little things, but then you have people that are super into the rare plants. And you can make a lot of money off of that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it prices out a whole group of people. So whereas a philodendron pink princess was maybe $50 to $75 2-3 years ago, now it's like $225 to start.
That sounds cool. I don't even know what plant it is, but it sounds dope. You said what? A what?
Philodendron pink princess.
Philadelphian pink princess. Pink princess.
It has like splashes of hot pink on the leaf that are naturally occurring.
That's dope.
So that plant is really expensive now. I don't want to contribute to a community where hardworking people are now classed out of buying a plant.
Damn, that's so crazy. There's even plant inequality now, dude.
Yeah.
That's insane. Gee, bruh. You just blew my mind. There's plant inequality out here. Like, people trying to get plants they can't even get their hands on.
Yeah.
Wow, $500 for a plant.
So when I really started, this first year of business has constantly been pivoting and adapting, and like what has each quarter brought to me, and like what have been the challenges. And I would definitely say that while I do want to offer some rare plants because I'm a collector and I know people are collectors, I never want to price things to a point where people feel like it's inaccessible.
Okay.
My main goal primarily, and that's something that I've been concentrating a lot on in these last few months, especially at the pop-ups, are plants that will do well in your outside garden.
Okay.
Plants that are easy to maintain now that we're all back at work and we're in the like hustle and the grinds again,
Yeah.
and everybody's out of the house.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's supposed to be an enjoyable hobby. It's not one where you're gonna feel like, damn, I just spent like $100 on this plant and like now it's dying.
I gotta keep it up, and it gives you
becomes
anxiety.
stressful. Yeah, that's that.
Bro, if I had a $500 plant, I'd be stressing out all the time, 100% about that plant. I ain't gonna front.
Dude, I have a couple plants that I'm like, let me apply the clown makeup because I've been so busy focusing on this business.
Yeah.
You know, that my own plants, I like had to step back and say like, what do I want in my own house? Like,
Yeah.
as far as what's gonna bring me joy, and like, is it gonna bring me joy to like have that stress?
Yeah.
No. So then, how would that affect the average person that's just getting into plant collecting?
Mm-hmm. I feel you. I
You
feel
know,
on
do you
that.
want like IG already is a landmine of like people's like highlight reels?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're
100%.
already dealing with seeing like, oh my god, like they got a new car. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, she got new tits.
Yeah.
Oh my god, now she, new
Yeah.
marriage. Oh my god, a new house.
A new
boat.
$500 plant.
Fuck, now they got that plant. Like,
Yeah.
and it's constantly seeing everybody's highlight reels, which is nice that people want to share the good moments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm assuming, again, me being hopeful.
Yeah.
Everybody's like sharing the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, nobody wants to be like, me quiero cortar la vena
Yeah.
because I lost my job and 5 people I know have dropped dead in the last 6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
So I need something to keep me anchored in a good way.
I feel you. I feel
So
you.
I get the concept behind why we share the things that we share on social media.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't slowly trickle in and make you feel a little inadequate.
I kind of like, I hear what you're saying there, But I take it like with a grain of salt. I already know everybody on there stunting and flexing. So it's not like, oh man, this and that. It's just like, man, congratulations if you're winning, right?
Right. And so for a lot of people, we have that mentality. And
Yeah.
there's some people that are like, fuck, man. Like, and I would
Like
say,
I'm falling behind.
but I would say that's maybe for, younger people
Yeah.
who are just coming into life, who are just becoming adults, who are coming into this during a pandemic. And, like I look at my cousin who's 21 and how difficult is it going to be for her to buy a home?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? I can't, in good conscience, hold her to the same standards from 20 years ago when I was buying my house.
Facts.
When I was 21.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There has to be a little bit of grace, and within that is the understanding that when I was 20, my whole life wasn't really necessarily on the internet. I mean,
There was no life on the internet.
like back in 2000, not really.
Well, it was MySpace. If that.
Maybe?
MySpace, I think, came out like, I don't even know, 2001 or
I was
something.
about to say,
Yeah.
I got lucky, man. I got real fucking lucky. And I tell my kids that all the time. You ain't going to find shit on me because there was no internet. Bye.
Face.
Which is why I'm like, you got to be real careful what you start putting out there about yourself.
100%, dude.
So-
Everybody go out there and clear out their MySpace accounts.
Some of us got lucky that we don't have to like live with that like digital history online.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then for
I
like
feel you.
the younger kids coming into it, the younger generation, they're like, oh my God, this is a lot of pressure. There's all these things that I got to live up to.
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't we start focusing on the fact that you may not be able to buy a home in your hometown?
Yeah, that's
You're
100.
Priced out of buying, you're priced out of affording.
But people don't want to have that conversation. They already told me to shut up a bunch of times already.
No, you got to keep having that conversation because then you got to think about how, okay, if that's my 21-year-old cousin who's now like priced out of like having accessible housing, then
Why in Orlando?
how about the person who's retiring with no family?
Yeah.
So on either end of the spectrum, when it's like the really young people that are our future
Mm-hmm.
and the elder people that have helped us get to where we are, like we're now in the middle.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of set a good example because even if our friends our age don't want to listen to the same shit we've been repeating, guess what? Like someone like my cousin is going to appreciate that.
I mean, yeah, they're definitely, because they see it.
They're already growing up in
Yeah.
a situation where they see how bleak it is.
Yeah, it's super bleak.
They're looking at a situation where it's multi-generational living. So if your parents own a house, better fucking take care of that shit because that's
Yeah.
going to be your house.
Yeah, if it becomes your house. If it doesn't get flooded.
Wow, in my cousin's case, good point. They live on a lake, so there's that.
Do they live on a lake in Doral? Shit, because then
Miami Lakes.
That's
Miami
a
Lakes.
double whammy. He's like, yo, you live out in the Everglades on a lake. Congratulations, guy.
But see, that's
You
the...
better pick your house up and fucking lift it up 6 feet or something.
I got so lucky. Like, I asked the right questions because I had my dad and my abuelo with me when I went buying my house.
Yeah.
So I had I had a middle-aged Cuban man and an
Yeah.
old Cuban man
Yeah.
who built houses, who were
Yeah.
contractors.
Okay.
And I was so embarraed at the time. I was like, oh my God, Dad.
Yeah. No, but they were asking the right questions.
They were
got
all
you the
asking the
spot.
right questions that kind of helped me, like, look for certain things. Like, I bought a house that was made out of, like, concrete cinder block.
Yeah.
Because that's what you should be buying if you're
100%.
buying a house in Miami.
Fact, because a hurricane will just take anything else away.
Right.
And
So
that was probably before, like, the crazy, like, upgrades to the city code.
I bought a house that had terrazzo floors because,
All
again, concrete flooring,
Yeah.
and they're made specifically to help cool your house down.
Yeah.
People tile over all that, and it's like, there's
Yeah.
a reason why it's made that way,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So, the hope is that we can continue to bring to light all these sustainability issues,
Yeah.
but also, like, create an avenue where we can make a small dent just in our local community.
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it through your vintage stuff. You're doing it through, like, cultivating plants and getting people hooked on the plant green thumbs, like, understanding how to plant certain things in your house, plants inside your house, creating, like, better oxygen for yourself and better mental health situations. You're going through that, bro, and I congratulate you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really hope that, that motivation to share that knowledge is something that other people can appreciate and, like, take from it too,
Yeah.
I get a lot of emails from other vendors, other plant vendors, and I don't see them as competition. I believe that there's room for all of us because we all have our specialty. And it's just about getting that information out there and sharing it with people however we can connect with them.
And you're down like to collaborate or anything like that? People could reach out to you. You're very accessible on your DM.
I am very accessible. I like to think that I'm a very easy person to approach, and I'm always looking to see like how we can collaborate to bring these events out to like different groups in Miami, you know? So yeah.
That's what's up, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For coming through. Thank you for talking to us, giving your time, explaining to people about this plant life out here. Plant life inequality. Hashtag plant life inequality.
Free the plants.
Free the plants, yo. I thought the only plant that cost that much was the cannabis plant, but shit, I'm completely out of tune with it.
No,
but yeah,
dude, weed is cheaper to buy than a Monstera Thai Constellation.
damn, bro. That shit better taste good as fuck. You already know. Hasta la próxima, bro. If you like it, share with your friends. If you hate it, share with your fucking enemies. But just share this shit, all right? Peace. You heard it there first. Thank you so much to Mireya, Botanical Daydreamer, for coming on to the show and talking to us about all the various topics that we touched on. If you want to reach out to her, you already heard the IG, Botanical Daydreamer. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out at Que Bola Podcast or at Fresher Fresh and hit us up with individuals that you think should be on the podcast. People are doing it up in South Florida through creative means. And if you like it, like I say, share it with your friends. And if you hate it, just share it with your enemies, but share that bitch, all right? Hasta la próxima, mi gente. We'll be in contact. Peace.